3 Ukrainian cruise missiles flew right into Russian airspace over the Black Sea. Racing towards a gas terminal, Russia's most advanced air defense, the S-400 system, was waiting for them. The operators were totally calm, just another quiet morning, right? But they absolutely hadn't seen the whole strike package coming next. It was secretly designed to confuse and punch through every single layer of defense. Imagine these Ukrainian Flamingos zipping along just 200 feet over the waves, okay? They're hauling at 540 miles per hour, and even though they weigh a massive 13,000 pounds on radar, they actually look like a tiny pelican. Seriously, how wild is that inland? The Russian radar operators were completely baffled. They scanned the horizon and the returns they got absolutely made zero sense. This awesome antenna can usually track 300 targets simultaneously, right? But these targets, they were absolutely not cooperating. The operator was seeing straight up ghosts. These signals kept flickering through the noise, popping up, vanishing, and reappearing somewhere new every time. It was crazy. The speed data proved that something was definitely out there, but the system just couldn't figure out what the real problem. Honestly, it's just physics, okay? At only 200 feet up, the Earth's curve creates a huge blind spot where ground radar is completely useless. Even the 91 N6E, sitting high on a truck, can only spot missiles hugging the water from about 22 miles away. We hear about the S-400's massive to 150-mile range, right? But that's for high-flying bombers, not those sneaky missiles absolutely hugging the waves where the beams just can't reach, you know? This geometry and built a weapon to exploit it. The airframe breaks down into 3 sections. The forward section, roughly 8 feet long, houses the guidance package, an inertial measurement unit containing 3 ring laser gyroscopes and 3 accelerometers, a GPS receiver with anti-jamming filters, and a mission computer that fuses navigation data and executes the pre-programmed flight path. But here is where things get interesting. The Flamingo's fuselage is built from E-glass. Fiberglass composite woven glass fibers embedded in epoxy resin layered over a honeycomb core. Music that provides structural integrity without adding weight. This helps it defeat radar beams. At 07:03 hours, the Flamingos crossed the 20 meters detection threshold. The Russian 91N6E finally achieved stable classification on the lead contact. Velocity 541 miles per hour. Altitude 190 feet. Heading 0-for-7 magnetic straight toward the gas terminal, now 18 miles ahead. Profile match cruise missile. The S-300 battery achieved classification 8 seconds later. Same target, same conclusion. Redundant information that arrived too late to matter. The battery commander had maybe 50 seconds before the engagement window collapsed. The 92 N60 gravestone fire control radar slewed toward the contact, its narrower beam building the precision track needed for intercept. Behind the first Flamingo, to more contacts resolved into hostile tracks. Behind those, something else slower, more numerous, too many to count. Before the first missiles had to fly, he ordered engagement without waiting for the S-300 coordination. The launch sequence took for seconds from command to ignition. The 92 N6E transmitted trajectory data to the missile's onboard computer, while the launcher rail elevated to departure angle. The gas generator pressurized the ejection system and compressed nitrogen kicked the 4-8 N6DM clear of the tube at roughly 100 feet per second, fast enough to clear the vehicle before the solid fuel booster ignited. The 4-8 N6DM you see flying now is a 2-stage interceptor nearly 23 feet long, weighing just under 4,000 pounds at launch. The sustainer motor ignites and the missile begins receiving mid-course guidance updates via data link from the ground-based radar. In the terminal phase, the onboard semi-active seeker takes over. The lead for 86DM's proximity fuse triggered 40 feet from the Flamingo. Close enough. Tungsten fragments shredded the missile's tail section, severing hydraulic lines and tumbling the airframe into the Black Sea in pieces. The second interceptor lost its lock at the worst possible moment, and the missile's onboard logic sent it into self-destruct rather than chase a solution it couldn't catch. One Flamingo down, to still inbound, their fiberglass skin soaking up radar energy like sponges. The gas terminal was now 14 miles away, less than 90 seconds of flight time. The S-300 requested handoff on the trailing contacts, but handoff required the 5-5K-6E command post to reconcile track numbers between batteries. And reconciliation burned seconds nobody had. The data link was still negotiating when the second Flamingo crossed the 20-mile threshold. For more missiles launched in rapid succession. From the S-400 to from the S-300. For 6 seconds, both batteries were engaging the same target. their missiles converging on a single radar track that didn't know it was supposed to be gone. The S-400's interceptors arrived first. One proximity hit that gouged the Flamingo's wing root. One clean miss as the target janked at the last moment. The S-300's missiles found a debris field where the cruise missile used to be. To Flamingo's down, $8.4 million in interceptors expended. Both batteries screaming for reload vehicles still for minutes out. And the third Flamingo was already past the engagement zone, descending toward the coast at 540 miles per hour with its 2,500 pounds warhead intact. Behind it, the track count on every Russian scope in the sector was still climbing. The command post display transformed in 90 seconds flat. The gas terminal was still 12 minutes from the worst of it, but the scope was chaos. Some contacts read like the Flamingo's, fast, faint, flickering through clutter. Others crawled across the scope at 120 miles per hour. Their radar returned steady and solid. Obviously propeller-driven, but too numerous to prioritize. Others matched nothing in the threat library, too fast for drones, too slow for cruise missiles. Signatures that suggested something Russian air defense hadn't seen before. The opening salvo had been the Flamingo's. The main strike was something else entirely, and the Russians were only now realizing it. But the contacts that mattered weren't the drones. They were to tracks now, designated Hostile 07 and Hostile 08, tracks that looked nothing like the Flamingo's. These were the signatures the operators had trained to recognize since April 2022. The missiles that sank the Russian ship Moskva. These are the Long Neptune missiles, and they exist because Ukrainian engineers asked the simple question, what happens if we make it bigger? The extra space isn't for a bigger warhead. It's music, almost entirely fuel. The MS for 00 turbine producing roughly 0 pounds of thrust now has enough propellant to push the missile 620 miles instead of 175. The warhead did grow from 330 pounds to 570 pounds, but only because the larger airframe could carry it without sacrificing range. The original Neptune used active radar homing, a small radar in the nose that turned on during terminal approach, found the biggest metal object against the uniform background of the sea, and guided the missile into it. So, the Long Neptune deleted the radar seeker entirely. In its place, a guidance computer running 3 navigation modes simultaneously. Primary mode is GPS, receiving position updates from satellites every second. Secondary mode is inertial navigation. 3 ring laser gyroscopes measuring rotation and 3 accelerometers measuring movement. The computer integrating those measurements to track position without external input. The S-300 battery commander recognized the Neptune's signature burst. His operators had trained specifically on identification after Moskva. They knew what to look for. He pushed the classification up the chain, while his fire control section started building solutions. But the 55K6E command post was still trying to. Can you believe this panic? They were absolutely struggling with tracking data, losing seconds. Suddenly, hostile Neptunes were screaming in at 560 miles per hour, right? Only 40 miles out, plus 14 slower drones were right behind them. They have 14 interceptors for 16 threats. Those Neptunes are the catastrophic priority, you know? Missiles first. The battery commanders reached the same conclusion independently. Their interceptors rippling off the rails within for seconds of each other. Hostile 07 took 3 hits and disintegrated over the coastline. Hostile 08 was luckier, or its profile was better. The Neptune jinked hard as the interceptors closed, dropping behind a low bridge near Golubetskaya at exactly the wrong moment. The 48N-60M lost lock entirely. One detonated 50 feet away, close enough to pepper the missile skin with. Same whether the delivery vehicle is pristine or falling apart. The Buck M3 battery commander positioned 15 miles east of the gas terminal had been watching tracks migrate across his scope for minutes. And what he saw didn't make sense. 14 contacts inbound from the southwest, velocities reading 120 to 130 miles per hour, propeller-driven for certain. The cruise missiles had already blown through his engagement zone. He'd watched the S-400 and S-300 salvos from his display, seen icons blink out as interceptors, found targets, or went ballistic chasing ghosts. Now the strategic SAM belt was reloading, and everything else was his problem. His 9S-36 engagement radar painted the lead contacts with its phased array beam. The 9S-36 is a lighter system than the S-400's radar. Roughly 900 transmit-receive modules instead of 8,500, but it's optimized for a different mission, tracking and engaging targets in the medium-altitude band where cruise missiles and tactical aircraft operate. Detection range tops out at around 75 against fighterized targets. Against small drones, effective range drops to maybe 25. Classification came back. UAV probable type one-way attack drone. That was the easy part. The hard part was deciding what to do about 14 of them when his battery carried 36 9m 17M missiles and couldn't reload in the field. The drone's Liutyis were nothing special to look at. Tube launched, propeller driven, about 12 feet long with a 20-foot wingspan that folded for transport. 75 pounds of explosive in the nose. Cheap airframe, cheap engine. Except the guidance wasn't cheap at all. The Skynode's flight computer bolted into each Liutyi's fuselage is roughly the size of a paperback novel, weighing just under 2 pounds. It contains 3 main components. A multi-core processor running navigation algorithms, an inertial measurement unit using 3-axis gyroscopes and accelerometers, and a downward-facing camera with a 60 field of view. 10 times per second, the camera captures a frame of the terrain below, roads, rivers, buildings, field patterns. The processor runs a visual algorithm comparing sequential frames to estimate movement, while simultaneously matching distinctive features against a reference map loaded before launch. A road intersection here, a river bend there, a building cluster music that matches stored coordinates. Each match generates a position fix accurate to within 15 feet under good conditions. When GPS is available, the Skynode fuses satellite data with visual fixes, weighting each source based on signal quality and consistency. When GPS degrades, the processor notices position jumps that don't match velocity, signal strength dropping below threshold, satellites suddenly claiming the drone teleported 600 feet in half a second. It doesn't panic. It reduces GPS confidence weighting and shifts trust toward the visual system. The drone keeps flying, keeps navigating, keeps closing in on the target. 8 miles northeast of the gas terminal, the Russian Pol-21 jammer site was doing exactly what it was designed to do. The Pol-21 is a distributed GPS denial system. Not a single powerful transmitter, but a network of small jamming nodes mounted on an existing infrastructure, cell towers, utility poles, and rooftops. Each node broadcasts noise across the primary GPS frequencies. The nodes are synchronized to create overlapping interference patterns, denying navigation across an 80 kilometers radius, while individual transmitters remained as small and to disperse to target with anti-radiation missiles. The system worked beautifully against weapons that needed satellites to find their targets. Against drones that could navigate by looking at the ground, it was burning electricity for nothing. The Pol-21 and the Buk M3 were supposed to work as an integrated layer. Russian doctrine assumed GPS-dependent weapons would wander off course once satellite links degraded. Easier to intercept, less dangerous if they got through. The Skynode S broke that assumption. The Liutyi weren't wandering. They were navigating by terrain, holding course within 50 meters, flying straight toward the gas terminal storage tanks. The surviving Flamingo complicated everything. It represented the highest value target on the scope. The Buk commander made his decision. Engage the cruise missile. Ignore the drones. 2 9M317M interceptors roared off the rails. This missile is smaller than the S-400s for 8N60M. Roughly 18 feet long, weighing 1,500 pounds, but it's faster off the rail. Accelerating past Mach for 0.5 in 3 seconds. The solid fuel motor burns for about 15 seconds, pushing the missile to a maximum speed near Mach 5 before burnout. Like the S-400's missile, it uses semi-active radar homing in the terminal phase with a proximity fuse wrapped around a fragmentation warhead. The first missile arrived from above and behind, its proximity fuse triggering at 30 feet. Tungsten fragments punched through the Flamingo's tail section, shredding control surfaces and severing hydraulic lines. The cruise missile's nose pitched down. Flight computer still trying to execute the programmed approach. Even as the airframe tumbled toward the water, it hit the Black Sea for 100 yards short of the beach. Its 2,500 pounds warhead detonating on impact. Close, but the gas terminal survived that one. The second interceptor found only spray, to missiles expended, to $2 million gone, one target eliminated. But the drones flew on. 34 missiles remaining, 14 drones inbound, one wounded Neptune that nobody had engaged since the S-300's near miss for minutes ago. The 9M317M was designed for aircraft and cruise missiles, not for 12T drones flying at 120 miles per hour. Its proximity fuse uses a small radar transmitter on the missile nose, broadcasting a continuous wave and measuring the Doppler shift of returns to detect when the target enters lethal range. The fuse triggers when return strength exceeds a threshold calibrated for aircraft-size objects. Against the Luffy's composite airframe, fiberglass skin over a foam core, returns were barely stronger than a large bird. Its probability might reach 85% against a fighter drop to less than 55% against these things. For 9 M317M launched in rapid sequence, 1 each for the 4 lead drones. 2 hits, 2 misses. The misses weren't guidance failures. They were fuse failures. Interceptors passing within lethal range, but not recognizing the radar. Return as target-like enough to detonate. 8 more missiles followed. 5 hits, 3 misses, 6 drones down, but the battery had just expended $13.2 million to destroy maybe $100,000 worth of Ukrainian hardware. And then there was the Neptune. Hostile 08 had been flying wounded for 6 minutes, trailing debris across the Krasnodar countryside, passing south of Temryuk city itself. The guidance computer had noted the damage and recalculated everything. What it was doing now, what kept the missile? It was still running because of the Kalman filter. This 1960 math algorithm powers absolutely everything, right? Think GPS and spacecraft navigation. It tracks the position, estimates GPS, and inertial land constantly figures out how much it can really trust the input. Pretty wild, okay? Wait, how does it know it's being jammed? It constantly compares GPS location to the internal movement data. If the GPS suddenly claims it just teleported 600 feet, but the accelerometers measure zero motion, that's absolutely jamming, you know? It spots that crazy signature and totally ignores the GPS signal. Okay, so when the jamming hit, the missile signal totally messed up, but seriously. It didn't panic, it instantly shifted to inertial navigation, dealing with the drift. Accuracy dropped like 300 yards of uncertainty, but that's nothing compared to the massive 45-acre tank, right? This thing was absolutely screaming and hot. The probability of impact was practically 100%, you know? This Neptune missile crossed the coast at nearly 500 miles per hour, just 300 feet off the ground. They finally locked onto it, but the engagement window was totally gone. Their anti-air missile needed 800 yards to even fire, right? But the target flew past in 3 seconds flat. The commander knew instantly there was absolutely nothing left to shoot. See that huge gas terminal? The Neptune missile absolutely slammed right into Tank 7, which was packed solid with explosive gas. Instant game over, right? That warhead punched right through the steel, turning the tank into a massive bomb. Flaming LPG ripped everywhere. Absolutely crazy, right? Fuel from Tank 7 blew Tank 9's safety valve. For seconds later, boom! We're talking about a massive liquid explosion, a 200-foot fireball. The bug battery still had 22 missiles and 8 drones coming in. The Pantsir crew saw the chaos. Okay, 8 targets showed up. We hit 4, but absolutely slipped past, right? They immediately targeted our main fuel lines and Tank 12. The fire spread so fast. Then, Tank 15 just blew up. That initial blast shot a 400-foot fireball. Then, tanks kept exploding in an absolutely massive cascade, right? We're talking 600 feet across. 22 of 30 tanks were gone. This whole crazy nightmare burned for 3 straight days.